Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
Excuse me! Taxi!
Come on, what are you doing? This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Chairman and CEO of Abacus Global Management. You can go to abacusgm.com. Fascinating business you're in, but you know what, Mr. Jackson, I would have pegged you for the CEO no matter what.
Yeah.
You got that CEO way about you.
Yeah, maybe it's the suit, the tie, the whole thing right now.
Suit, tie, 6'2",
yeah,
whatever. I mean, you are a born leader. Have you ever been told that?
I just by my dad. Yeah, that's the only way, and that was only for just a little while.
So, Abacus Global Management, abacusgm.com. First of all, what is that?
So Abacus Global Management is a company that has really 4 verticals, but it's based on a core, simple thought process, is that using your lifespan data and applying it to different financial services really matters, right? And the first thing is, how do you get it? We've been doing this for over 20 years, and it started with insurance, right? Having people better understand the current value of their life insurance policy, then they need to better understand how long they're going to remain in that contract, right? It's a crazy thing. We get so uncomfortable talking about mortality because it depends on where you are in your own life arc. If you're younger, you're really uncomfortable with it. You think you're going to live forever. If you're older, you're sick of it, right? You're like, man, I'm out. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Either way, we need to start having those conversations, because if the number one fear is running out of money in retirement, life insurance is a piece to this, but shouldn't you also know how long you're going to be in retirement? You have target date funds to get you there, but you have no allocation on what's going to happen when you're there. And that's why people need to understand what they're investing and buying, and that's what Abacus helps them do.
All right, so that's a big factor. Yeah, how long am I going to live in retirement? I guess we need to know that.
Yeah.
And you guys can pinpoint that how?
So we actually aggregate an individual's medical file, so it's a custom solution. So we get a HIPAA release, we get all their medical files, and then what we do is we compare them to every person just like them over the last 20 to 30 years that's had a mortality experience that has the exact same type of medical impairments, right? Also family history, like, so they have cardiovascular disease, liver disease, what's their weight, what's their family history look like, where do they live? You look at all those factors, and then you say, over the next several years, how many mortalities have happened in the past? It's not a guess. It's actually what happened to people just like you. So we're not trying to take the whole population and say smoker, non-smoker. We're trying to say, this is exactly what this person has. This is what's happened. And because of that, this is where the highest mortality range is for people who are just like you. Meaning that might be 7 years, it might be 10 years, it might be 15 years. You always have some variance, and it's a curve. Some on the front end, some go longer. What impacts that, right? And I think that's what we always find so interesting, is how valuable that data can be to someone when, let's say, they're 80 years old. Or actually, let me take a step back. If you're 65, what's one of the first decisions you have to make right now? Am I going to collect Social Security? Right? Am I going to defer?
Everybody does, right? Pretty much. Well, not really. There's amazing. An advantage to
There's this whole trend around people deferring Social Security. My premise is, why on earth would you make that decision without the information, right? Shouldn't you know what your estimated lifespan is and your probability? Because then if you're going to defer and collect a higher payment at age, let's say 72 or 75, you should have an informed decision of what drove that, right? Why do you think you're going to live to 85? When in some cases, you're 65, probabilistically, they're sitting at a 10-year lifespan, 75, you should never defer. You should take that money right now. And those are the financial decisions that we're just ignoring, and that data is so, so valuable.
So Abacus Global, so persons out there,
yeah,
they want to know, they should know, not from a doctor, but from you, actually, how much longer they have to live.
Right.
So let's say you tell them, you're probably going to live another 9 years.
Right.
Then what happens?
Well, first thing happens is this, which is probably a unique experience that most of your listeners wouldn't imagine. The first thing I'm told is, no way I'm living that long, by the way.
Oh.
That's the number one response by far. And that should be the first concern that we have. We hear all out there from Elon Musk to everybody that we're going to live forever, right? That's just not going to happen, right? You mentioned Dick Van Dyke in the early part of our conversation, or this entry point to this. Before Dick Van Dyke, there hadn't been another centurion over 6 feet tall. Right, the whole thing of Dick Van Dyke living to 100, the media missed the biggest part of that story. He's over 6 foot tall.
He's like 6'5" or something, right?
6'1", but that hadn't happened before. At least that people had measured and looked at. Why? There's a number of reasons why people over 6 feet tall don't live to 100. Like myself, who's 6'5", there's not anyone we can find that's lived older than 95. So what are we doing, right? Why are we making this exception to say that, I'm going to delay this. I'm going to not talk about this. I'm not going to have this conversation, because that's ultimately what ends up happening. And then when you're 80, it's too late. And what I mean by that is, by the time we tell somebody what their lifespan is, guess what? They're sitting back going, I don't feel good. My medicine's terrible. You're telling me I'm going to be here another 7 years? This is miserable. Because like my father, who passed away in August, right? The last 2 years are brutal, right? He was a fireman for 40 years. And the last 2 years are incredibly expensive, painful, and he goes through a process. But it was only 2 years. Greg, imagine if that's 4 years. You're going to watch half your net worth disappear in the last 4 years of life, just in medical costs. And I think those are the things we have to start paying attention to.
Okay, so once we know and we make some decisions, you help us make those decisions, and then you can help us either liquefy or invest, or you guys do that too,
we
right?
We do. So some of the options that we provide, right? Like the first thing we'll do is we'll talk about a life insurance policy. Life insurance, $14 trillion industry, right? 2.5 times U.S. residential real estate market. It is massive. It is designed to fail, though. Here's what I mean by that. 90% of all policies never pay a claim. That should shock people. 90. Those over the age of 65, 75% never pay a claim.
Why not?
It's not because the insurance companies did anything nefarious. You know what happens? You get to be 75 or 80 years old, and you look around and you're saying, my kids are grown. Why am I paying this thing? They view it as debt, not equity. However, we are a great country. In the United States, Supreme Court ruled in 1911 that life insurance is personal property, just like your home. Nowhere else in the world does that ruling exist. And what it means is you own that contract. Therefore, you can sell and transfer it to a third party for today's market value. Okay, fine. How do you understand what today's market value is? First thing you do when you look at net present value of a contract, how long am I going to be in the contract, right? You understand your lifespan. So all of a sudden, you have $1 million life insurance policy. You're 80 years old. You run your lifespan data, determine it's about 7 years remaining, plus or minus, and you're saying to yourself, okay, this is how much in future cost I have over the next 7 years. You can easily equate that. And then you solve for what the current value is. Look, in 7 years, worth $1 million when you pass away to your heirs. But today, that might be worth $250,000. Abacus has paid out nearly $250 million last year to seniors, just on their insurance. And then once you get that, it's, okay, now how do you allocate based upon what that 7-year time frame is, right? If you're 65, same philosophy, how should you allocate differently? Right? How should you think about having conversations with your beneficiaries? And I think it's going to be the biggest change in financial services. JP Morgan doesn't talk about it, and they should. And everybody else should. Is they set up financial plans to fail because they don't have the underlying data. That's where Abacus sits in applying what we deemed our longevity and lifespan data and started applying it to different financial services. Look, we're a publicly traded company, right? We trade on the New York Stock Exchange. And because of that, we're able to put this information out transparently. What's happening to financial services stocks right now? You see this in AI, right? Everyone's getting displaced by AI. AI is coming in and saying, I'm going to do financial services better. Do you know what company AI needs? Us, the source data. They need us. They can't operate without us. AI is nothing without the data that comes in. So they require our inputs to help build these financial plans. So you look at companies like ours that are insulated from this AI disruption that actually benefit. That's where you should start to be thinking.
Okay. Well, that's a lot on our plate.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Now, I mean, what's the next move? What do I do? I mean, this is very compelling. AbacusGM.com. Just go there and it helps us.
Abacus GM gets you a good start, right? Like you can start to kind of see the path. We have alternative investment funds. We have the insurance life solutions division. We have our data and tech division where we can start to help you better understand how to utilize and capture that lifespan data. It's a program called Life Arc, which we're introducing. You know, your lifespan's not a straight line. It's an arc of possibilities. The things that get me excited about the data, though, Greg, is that you can start to have an impact earlier, right? That education really flips the mindset. I'll give you an example. We all know one of the biggest impacts you can have on lifespan is exercise, muscle mass, right? How do you do it? How do you get there? How do you motivate someone to do that? We all know that exercise matters, but nobody does it, right? How do you change habits, right? Typically fear and greed, right? Think about it, right? It changes a lot of things. If you have a life-changing event, you have a heart attack, what happens? You eat better. That's fear, right? I say be greedy. Understand that I want to be super healthy when I'm 80. I want to be able to exercise. I want to be able to do these things. I want to have functionality. Be greedy with your life. And the simple steps are, here's a great tip for all your listeners. You want to change somebody's life in their 70s? Buy them the gift of a second language. Look, I'm not going to tell you which language company to go for. I don't rep them. I don't know them. But give somebody the gift of a second language. Here's why. Seniors at an alarming rate are more lonely than they've ever been. This is a really startling scenario. Seniors on a age basis, if you look at suicide rates in the United States, those over the age of 65 have the highest suicide rates in the country.
Oh, boy.
Over the age of 75 is number one.
Yikes.
What's happening, right? What's happening?
Rural Americans deserve access to the best our nation has to offer, especially when it comes to health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families' health. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.